Remember when progressives on the Twitter used to say, it's time to have a conversation? I think it's time to have a conversation with the left now. Like, how much left are you going to push until you shake hands with Hitler from the other side of the horseshoe? Legit question. Because a lot of people now go like, oh yeah, it's a university. I mean, obviously they're going to burn books. Duh. But I think there's more than that. I think you should stop for a little bit and ask what is going on here. So, the whole thing with burning books used to make sense in a time where the human knowledge was stored on books. So by burning the book, you're sending a message to people who write the books. It's like, hey, keep writing more books and maybe you're going to be in the pyre, right? Like that was the whole point, was to burn them in the public, to make a spectacle out of it. It was also to virtue signal. Like the first bonfires with books were done by people willingly bringing their own books into those piles. So it was like private citizens could do whatever they wanted. But it was like the virtue of burning the book which was appealing to people. And secondly, it was to destroy the knowledge of the books. Like, it was considered that those books have esoteric knowledge, heretical literature, which had to be burned. And why are people doing it now? Because now the information is not stored on books. Now the information is stored online. I find it a lot worse when something is taken down Amazon because activists complain than when a book is burned. So why do they do it? I mean, after years of making sure that book burning is compared to the Nazis, like you can't separate the two, why is the progressive left burning books? And the reason they do it is that they can. Like, they want to show you that they have the ability to break cultural taboos. They are the ones in power now. They are the ones with the big cock swinging it like a helicopter, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. They are trying to say that they can act like the Nazis, and they are above criticism. In other words, it's fine when they do it. They can do literally anything, and they are going to be above criticism. You cannot hurt them in any way, shape, or form. Now, if you were to burn a book from a progressive person, you would get fired because you're a Nazi. But when they do it, it's fine. It's so fine, in fact, that most people find it normal. Like, most people, when they read about this article, they're like, oh, well, I mean, it's a university, of course. That is how they learn nowadays. Secondly, it has to do with Jordan Peterson resigning and saying that universities aren't what they used to be. And this is what the left is a master at subverting things in order to completely derail and make them unfit for purpose. So when people think about universities, they will still think about what universities used to be. And what they used to be is that they would give you the tools in order for you to think for yourself, in order for you to be able to use your mind in a logical manner, regardless for what you want to do. Like, they didn't tell you what to think, they told you how to think. So, for example, when I went to law school, the teacher would ask us, like, what is our stance on abortion? And then it would make us try to come up from the opposite stance and make an argument on that. So, like, for example, if I was pro-choice, they would make me write an essay about being pro-life. And I would have to actually think about arguments to become a pro-lifer. And then we had debates. So you'd have a couple of students that were pro-life debating with a couple of students that were pro-choice. And the whole purpose of this was to try and understand the subject by viewing it from both sides, trying to see if when you're a lawyer, you can actually make arguments in the case of your client who you may disagree with. Like, maybe your client is a piece of shit, but you're his lawyer and you have to represent him. So the university was teaching me how to come up with arguments, how to play devil's advocate, how to think outside the box. That was the whole purpose. Nowadays, at least in the West, from what I can hear, there's like a correct way of thinking and there is a wrong way of thinking. And if you're part of the wrong crowd, if you're doing the wrong way of thinking, well, you're not welcome at that university. It's going to start with students ostracizing you. It's going to end up with professors giving you bad grades. It's going to end up with activists going through your social media to try and find something offensive so you can get expelled. And I'm sorry, but like, that's not a place that creates people with the capacity to think for themselves. It's not a place that creates smart individuals. It's a place that creates indoctrinated individuals that are told, okay, like, this is what's acceptable, this is how you need to think, and if you don't, then you're a problem. And they do this by burning books. Like, you're not allowed to read this literature. It's heretical. And when you look at the literature that they're burning, it's like, it's not like how the Nazis even started by burning pornography and whatnot, because like at the beginning, at the first book piles, that was what they started burning. But they're burning like Tintin, Asterix and Obelix, Lucky Luke. I mean, classicals, absolute classicals, books for children. Why are they doing this? To normalize the act of book burning. To normalize in the mind of the students that there is certain information out there that is so harmful, it is so damaging for society, that the only way to combat it is to destroy it. You can't argue against it, you can't mock it, there's nothing you can do except destroy it. And you also need to make a public spectacle out of it. Everyone needs to see you destroying these books, these works of art, in order to show what a virtuous person you are. Because in the new mindset, in the new cultural zeitgeist, you're not a virtuous person if you donate money to the poor. You're not a virtuous person if you actually help people. You're a virtuous person if you burn books and you show others the fact that you're burning them. And then you use the ashes in order to plant a tree. Because that's what they did. Like, brilliant activism. I've never pissed my eyes more than when I saw the Canadian students planting a tree. Do you know that there's a guy that planted that entire forest? And you probably don't hear about him. Because he actually does make a change. And it makes the people who are virtue signaling look horrible by comparison. So this is why the media goes like, shh, get out of the way. Get out of the way. You're ruining our spotlight. It's kind of like the nobles who deserve the spotlight. And looking at the peasant who's actually accomplishing something and going like, shh, you're not part of the nobility. I don't care if you actually came up with something great. You're a peasant. Shut the fuck up. So apparently Tintin in America was targeted, which is curious because though its depiction of Native Americans is patronizing, it was intended to be sympathetic, poor yet proud. They are driven from their land by greedy Americans. Yeah, so all of the ideology, which is about getting people together, trying to find a common denominator, that is horrible because it goes against identity politics. Identity politics isn't about getting people together. It's like, no, you were born in a specific caste. You are born under a specific identity. You have your interests. And there is no common denominator. Like, there was actually an academic which wrote a paper that really blew my mind when I read it. It was like, you shouldn't say person that happens to be black. You should say black person. And the reason is that you are bringing universal humanity in front of the identity. So this is what people at the academia are writing. Okay, like incredibly racist shit. But for some reason, it's considered anti-racist. Isn't that interesting? And in their academic bubble, they have formed like this really radical culture that is now being used to indoctrinate students. So when you go to the academia, you don't learn how to be intelligent. You don't learn how to think. Instead, you learn how to be indoctrinated. And then all these students, they get out of the academia and they consider themselves smart because they have a piece of paper. They consider themselves to be smarter than a truck driver because, well, I went to university. Aren't I smart? And maybe you are smart because you went to a university, but you're not making the same money like the truck driver, now are you? And, you know, all these people who are talking about privilege, they never take into account that there are very smart people out there who could graduate a whole number of universities, but they don't have the money to go to one. So just because, like, someone is now a carpenter doesn't mean that you with your gender studies degree, you're more smart than him. No, you're probably not more smart than him. He just probably didn't have money to go to the university, or he was actually smart and realized that if everyone goes to the university, no one goes to carpeting, so going to carpeting is actually going to be more profitable. Because universities require desks too, and someone has to make them. And if there's less people willing to make them, then there's more money for the few people that remain in the business. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.